All right. So again, thank you all for joining this information session. As you are aware, the purpose of this session is to help spread the word about the program and encourage incoming and current graduate students to apply by the June 30th deadline. And we're joined here today by several core faculty and alumni who will be able to speak to the program and share a little bit about their experiences and what the certificate offers. We'll start the conversation with Dana Cuff, who is a professor of architecture and urban design here at UCLA and is the director and lead PI for the Urban Humanities Initiative. Dana will give just sort of a brief overview of the program, its origins, and go over some of the certificate requirements. And apologies for the sound outside. That's the dump truck going by. Followed by Dana, we'll have Professor. Yeah, can folks hear okay?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Perfectly.
Thank you. And then following Dana, thank you for that thumbs up. We'll have, we're joined by Professor Gustavo Leclerc, who is the Associate Director of Urban Humanities. Gustavo is going to focus mostly on the theme for the coming year and what we're going to focus on, and also provide an example of a student project that has been produced in the past that we think you will all find very compelling and demonstrative of the kinds of work that we do in urban humanities. And then we're also joined by Maite Zubiaude, Professor of Spanish and Portuguese and Germanic Languages. And we'll also be joined by Todd Presner, who is a Professor of Germanic Languages and Comparative Literature. Both Todd and Maite are co-PIs for the Urban Humanities Initiative. And we'll sort of elaborate on what the certificate program has to offer, and will hopefully give you a more kind of well-rounded understanding of what urban humanities is. And then we'll be joined by several alumni. We have Kate Taylor Hasty on Zoom with us, as well as Jacqueline Barrios. Kate is pursuing her PhD in architecture, and Jacqueline is pursuing her PhD in English. And both of them are alumni of this program and are going to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a student in the urban humanities and what they learned from the program and how urban humanities has kind of impacted their intellectual and professional trajectories. We have a couple other alumni. Kenny Wong will join us. He's a graduate of the dual degree programs in architecture and urban planning. And myself am a graduate from the Masters in Urban Planning program at UCLA. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Just a note on participation. We'll have about 20 minutes at the end of the session for a Q&A. Please, in order to raise your question raise your hand during the Q&A session, please click on the button at the bottom of the Zoom screen where it says participants, and you'll see a raise your hand icon. And I'll go ahead and take note of the order of hands raised, and then we can just go through at the end of the conversation through your questions. Okay. With that, we'll go ahead and hand it over to Professor Dana Cuff.
Thanks, Gus. I'm going to share my screen and just give everyone an overview of the way urban humanities is going to look this coming year. Let's see. And maybe you can let me know if you see that shared screen. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes? Now do you see it? It says it's a wrong page, but let me just get to the right page. Defining urban humanities?
Actually, Dana, now we're unable to see it. And I
How
wonder...
about now?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, so, fine. Okay, so Um, we're really excited to have you thinking about joining us. It's a kind of extended family. This will be upcoming our 8th year of running Urban Humanities. And as Gus and Gustavo and Maite and Todd and I will always say, it's some of the most meaningful pedagogical experiences we've ever had at UCLA. And coming from me, that's a long time of evaluation. The Urban Humanities is a very special space within the university, especially now given how much trauma and violence we're seeing in the city, especially the anti-Black violence. I think our commitment to spatial justice in the urban humanities is absolutely central piece of what UCLA needs to be doing as it moves forward, and what a lot of you in your future careers will want to be thinking about as you move on in architecture, planning, and the humanities. We really see urban humanities as a way of enhancing all of our relevance so that we bring our scholarship and professional skills to bear in ways that really promote social justice. So this year is a change from the past years. We've just received 3 more years of funding from the Mellon Foundation. We will again bring together 1/3 of the students from architecture, 1/3 from planning, and 1/3 from the humanities to study critical issues impacting everyday urban life. We're going to be focusing this year on Los Angeles specifically. About half the, at least in the fall, we begin with a seminar that Gustavo Leclerc leads on LA. And about half the students involved who choose into those largest research undertaking will be focused on Los Angeles, and the other students will be working with various faculty mentors in different parts of the world and the city. So unlike past years where we've taken a group of students to Shanghai or taken a group of students to Tokyo, this year we're really focused much more on intimate research mentorships with selected faculty and groups of cross-disciplinary student teams, say of 3 or 4 students. Every one of the research undertakings deals with spatial justice, has a kind of studio-based approach, and focuses on the innovative methods that have come to characterize urban humanities. And I'm just showing you kind of what work looks like in the urban humanities. We especially like that work when we're all together and our bodies are actually in the same spaces under remote circumstances. I think in particular, Maite and Gustavo have really been creative in terms of finding ways to do engaged scholarship without our ability to do collective fieldwork. And we're optimistic that we may be able to start that again in 2021 in the coming year. But we have very well developed now ways of working, even if we have to remotely. The focus of urban humanities is architectural, urban, and humanist. And we take on questions of speculative futures, thinking not only about the way history and historical narrative has shaped our understanding of our collective lives together, contemporary interpretations of what's going on in the everyday space of cities today, but also how we make the world we want to live in. And really that's where questions of spatial justice come into being. We're always actually working towards transformation and a kind of ethics of practicing being good urban citizens. That means that we're invoking our own agency as scholars and activists and urbanists throughout the work that we do in urban humanities. This is what the curriculum looks like for the coming year. In the fall, there will be a required seminar led by Gustavo Leclerc. He'll talk about that more next. In the winter and in the fall, there will be electives that you take that would be part of the graduate certificate program, because the Urban Humanities leads towards a graduate certificate, which is a little bit like having a minor as a graduate student, but demonstrates on your CV, for example, that you have additional expertise besides your home discipline. And then in the spring, we will undertake a series of different capstone research projects, which I alluded to earlier with various faculty. Maite and I are likely to run a capstone with 2 or 3 students who would elect to study with us. Maite's projects are extremely interesting. I'm sure she'll say a little bit about that later. Gustavo and Anastasia Lukaitu-Sederis will be running one of the principal capstones, which will probably involve about half of all students in the Westlake Pico Union neighborhood. And other faculty will be enlisted, some of whom will be working in places like Berlin, like Todd, or in Tijuana, maybe Paavo Munkinen would be working there. And those capstones would take their students traveling with them. There will probably be a couple of capstones that will travel in the coming year, and the others will travel to parts of our own city that are less familiar probably to most of you. In addition to that fall, winter, spring course sequence, there will be methods workshops. These, I think, are really what we imagine as some of the strongest contributions that Urban Humanities has to make towards your education. We will offer 6 of those, and you will elect to take the 4 that work into your own schedule. And those have to do with the sort of special methods that we've developed at Urban Humanities. And you see that in the last bullet point here. Thick mapping, spatial ethnography, filmic sensing, as well as design interventions, photonovellas, and a number of others. Before I talk a little bit about just thick mapping, I want to point out that really one of the most important aspects, another important aspect of Urban Humanities, is that we have these deep partnerships and flattened hierarchies, very un-university-like in some ways, between faculty and students and community members, where we really see our greatest education and contribution to be in the true collaboration and engagement of those different participants. And everything we do has a public audience. So one of the things that our humanities students often say to us is that it is one of the only places in the university that draws them out of their focused library-like work into a much more public setting. I think our architecture students often say that it's one of the sites where they really feel a sense of social engagement, which might be why they came to architecture in the first place. And the planning students also can suggest that it's one of the sites where they actually get their hands on real material and actually do interventions and projects that have real impacts. All of those are true for students from each of the different disciplines, but I think that might characterize what each group thinks has been one of the highlights of Urban Humanities for them. Thick mapping is one of the sort of core methods or practices of Urban Humanities, where we do critical cartography and counter cartographies to find sort of layered spatial understandings of histories and contemporary cultural settings. And then this is the last slide to say that we're also always action or agency oriented. And here you just see a few of the kind of projects that students have done in the past. It's our goal that this engaged scholarship contributes to a larger sense of spatial justice, and that, as I mentioned before, the projects are generated with, by, and for communities. So with that, I will stop sharing. And I look forward to answering any questions that you might have later.
Great, thanks, Dana. So now we'll hand it over to Gustavo Leclerc.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I want to share my screen. Let me see really quick. Can you see my screen? Yeah, great. Yeah, this is to say like the urban humanities, it's very, very engaged in addressing pressing current social issues. And that's what I wanted to start with this image, because it's something that we are facing urgently, and we want that to be part of our endeavors. Whatever we do is part of our ethos. This year, the next year is going to focus in Los Angeles, but in particularly in the Westlake Pico Union area or neighborhood. And so the question is, why Westlake? And well, Westlake, we see Westlake as a microcosmos of the larger forces, social, political, economic, special forces affecting other areas in Los Angeles and other areas in large US cities. Also, is unique because it's the second uh, area with high density after Koreatown. In fact, the four neighborhoods in that area, Koreatown, Pico Union, Westlake, and West Hollywood, are by far the four largest high density neighborhoods. It's like a mini city within a city, which many layers of spatial and social complexity. Just to, and then of course it has a large immigrant population, is issues of gentrification, housing insecurity, the unhoused, police brutality, public safety, environmental degradation are intensified in this microcosm. So it makes it a very interesting and important neighborhood to engage with. And just kind of what I was trying to say earlier, here are the four. Westlake, for you who are not from LA, Westlake is right next to Koreatown, and it's squeezed between Koreatown and downtown LA. And the south is Pico Union, and the north is Echo Park and East Hollywood. It has a significant architecture. It was a premier neighborhood in the 1910s, 1920s. So some of the architecture is still very evident of the significance of the neighborhood in that time. Some architecture, like you see, and to the upper right hand, the Westlake Theater, which was a very prominent theater, and now it's being readapted to for local commerce. Also in the neighborhood is MacArthur Park. MacArthur Park has a very interesting, complex history. It's one of those contested spaces in LA. Also in the area, informal economies, different types and different scales and intensities are very dominant in the public spaces. As I mentioned, the unhoused is after Skid Row. This Westlake has one of the highest also unhoused populations. And also one thing that I want to mention in this last year, with Maite and I, we really make an extra effort to engage artists, creative practitioners, and working in the different projects with the students and conducting a series of workshops, method workshops, learning about their strategies for addressing significant social issues through art-based research methods. So we work with Chicana muralist Judy Baca. Some of you probably from LA know that she created the Great Wall of Los Angeles. It's an alternative history of Los Angeles from the perspective of the people of color or the working class. It's a very significant half-mile long mural. And then to the right, we work, it's an installation by Tijuana artist, Erre, and they did this double-headed Trojan horse at the border. He worked with us doing workshops. Also, Lian Hidalgo did a series of photonovela workshops. Photonovelas are these some sort of still photo based narratives. In this case, they're focused on stories along MacArthur Park and different topics. Also, we work with Jesse Lerner in creating short films, different special justice issues around Westlake area. With Maite, a fantastic group of young filmmakers. Dignicraft also conducted work during the winter. They do social documentary, but in very creative and innovative ways. Also, the artist scholar from Mexico City, Marisa Belauste Huigoitia, that she works with a really interesting project with art and with women inmates in Mexico City. Also, we have guest speakers. One of them was Sandy Rodriguez. He's a young contemporary Latin artist doing very interesting work. Just to mention some of the people who we're engaging. So in the next year, we are gonna kind of, in a similar manner, perhaps with different artists, create art-based research methods workshops. And then, in this last quarter, in the spring, in part because urban humanities at the center of urban humanities is doing field work, direct field work in situ. So we're going out to the area, going out to the place, talk to people, sense how the place works, observe closely the dynamics, exchange type of knowledges with local with the local community, learn from them, and establish a relationship with the people in the community. But this case, because of the pandemic, we couldn't do that. So we have to create a new research method that will be conducted remotely, but also that could excavate some of the significant social special issues in the Westlake area. And the research method that we created, it was inspired by the pre-Columbian pictorial narratives called codices, for, which were some sort of manuscripts, an accordion type manuscripts that will depict important events in the history of the Aztecs or the Mystics or the Mayas. Those are the three main groups that develop this type of narratives. They are pictorially based, not textual based, which make them also very interesting. So it favors the visual, the pictorial over the textual. Um, not that we don't believe in the textual as a record, as a form of record, yes, but also we're looking at how visual and pictorial information can tell us about a particular, about experiences and histories and stories of a particular community. We divided the students in groups of 4, and each one chose a different topic. From informal economies, the students developed the Loncheras archives, then art and performance, Los Angeles transculturation, and film. They look at border films, a group architecture about the significant and hidden history of some important buildings in the area, political protests, particularly focused in MacArthur Park. MacArthur Park historically has been a significant place for organizing political protests. And then graffiti, and some sort of the politics, the aesthetics, the cultural and social significance of graffiti in the area. I want to end by showing, if I have, sorry. Yeah, just really quickly, if I have time, one of the e-codecs, but just to get a sense, let me stop sharing. Do I have 1 minute, Gus? Oh.
1 minute, yep.
Okay. I think it would be good to see. Okay. These are the 6 codes. I just want to show you these really quick, if I can. A group of students did look at the material performative culture of the area, and they base in the research and looking at 4 distinct symbols. And you know, they were interested in exploring how transculturation processes work, how they migrate, how they adapt, how they change, how, and they base their studies and theories of critical archival theories, as well as placemaking. So in these story maps, that's the platform that we use. They locate some of the significant sites that they were looking at in the area. You click and it will tell you a little bit about the site. I'm not going to do that. And then the symbols that they chose for their research were the cactus, flowers, particularly the cempasúchil flower, then stories, kind of narratives, and the last one was the flowers, prose, and the sweetbread, but particularly the concha, the shell. And so you click in some of the images and some of the text. Also, this group did a very interesting kind of parallel project that was more creative, that allowed it to do more playful things. They call it a mosaic. You click in that, and it's interesting. It's a little more dynamic, and you know, you remove the postcard of the Westlake, and then you have this group of flowers, and you remove them. and then you're starting to uncover the different topics that they research. And you click on one particular topic, it will give you information from different sources, locations, of what that symbol is, as well as historical, some sort of significance of that symbol. So it's very dynamic. So I'll invite you to check it out sometime. I think I'm gonna end there, but you can see that some sort of kind of the creativity and the uniqueness of this type of, and kind of experimental nature of this type of research method.
Great, thank you so much, Gustavo. Now I just want to hand it over to Professor Zubiaure and Presner, if Todd has joined us. So Maite, go ahead. Oh, Maite, I think we just have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I was saying thank you, Gus, and thank you, Gustavo and Dana. And though I've been a human urbanite for 7 years, I never get tired of listening about what urban humanities actually is. And part of me not getting tired is because urban humanities changes all the time and gets better and better. So it is truly a living organism that progresses and changes directions, and it's malleable and adaptable. So it's a true pleasure. I always say all UCLA should be like urban humanities. That's actually what we should be, actually. In any case, I would love to share the screen as well. Share screen. Do you see the PowerPoint? Yeah, okay. Okay, so this is not it. Okay, so anyhow, I call this from thought to action, and I think urban humanities, let me do something about this. Yeah, because, and first let me say that the presentation is going to be color coded. Everything in blue refers directly to urban humanities and two of its disciplines, urban planning and architecture. Whatever is yellow, it's more reflective of the discipline of humanities. And what I would like to show you is how these three disciplines, urban planning, architecture, and humanities, constantly intertwine and challenge and enrich each other. So let me start by saying that thanks to urban humanities, I developed an alter ego, which is Filomena Cruz, which is me as an artist. And I have to say, if I developed my artistic inclinations, it was because of urban humanities. Urban humanities gave me the bravery and the vision to do so. So Maite Zubiaure is the scholar that is now talking to you. And again, I have a PhD in comparative literature. I'm a professor in Germanic languages and Spanish and Portuguese. I'm affiliated to urban humanities and digital humanities, and now part also of a Mellon Sawyer seminar on the sanctuary movement. And Filomena Cruz is my alter ego as an artist, and I do trash collages, style art, and an artistic intervention that is ongoing, started in 2015, called The Wall That Gives, El Muro Que Da, in a nutshell. I also, why isn't this working? Sorry about this. Okay, I also want to point out that I consider myself urban humanities avant la lettre. Since the beginning of my research, I was interested in all things space, and increasingly so in spatial justice, an evolution that urban humanities has also gone through. So let me explain what I mean by this. Again, I write about many different things. I seem to be a quite dispersed scholar, but urban humanities actually taught me that there's a glue that puts all these pieces together. And this is my interest in what I like to call all creatures discarded. In fact, my last book on Talking Trash is devoted to all creatures discarded, and very much in the wake of Zygmunt Baumann's book on wasted lives. So for example, when I wrote my first book, which is on space and setting, the realist novel, space in the literary criticism of the time and theory, which was narratology, was certainly ancillary to time. When I decided to write on women thinkers in Spanish thought, of course, they were and still are, alas, ancillary to male philosophers. When I wrote a book on cultures of the erotic in Spain and recovered all the hidden and censored repository of early 20th century erotica in one of my countries, the body was certainly considered ancillary to the mind, and popular culture certainly ancillary to high culture. My last book is actually on talking trash, and there's no need to explain. It's really at the bottom, literally and figuratively, of all of it. And it's going to also be translated into Spanish. I've translated it already. It's going to be published pretty soon. And now I'm engaged in another project that was born in one of UCLA Urban Humanities seminars, which is on forensic empathy. I'm co-writing it with Jonathan Chrisman, one of our co-authors in our book on urban humanities, and it's actually about the artistic representations and the mapping of the borderlands and the objects left behind by migrants in the US-Mexico, at the US-Mexico border, very much in a nutshell. So I wanted to show you this because this is Filomena Cruz's important, or most important actually, a more long-standing intervention. It's the wall that gives and muro que da, and exactly like urban humanities, it evolves over the time. And now in June of 2020, of course, it is on Black Lives Matter, and the wall gives every day a tile. There's one now there, or maybe it has been taken already, gives a tile away for somebody to take. Anyhow, this is not about my walls. I'm going to move forward. This is actually about urban humanities, and this is the book that we wrote together, and it's now out, just freshly out of the oven. Hopefully there's going to be a book presentation in fall. And what I did, I took the license of using the description of the book in MIT's MIT Press's webpage, and I colored it. I colored it and used yellow actually for the humanities, as I said, and blue actually for everything from the other two disciplines of urban humanities: urban planning, design, and architecture. And you can see how these three disciplines actually are intertwined and talk to each other. So urban humanities is an emergent field at the intersection of the humanities, urban planning, and design. It offers a new approach not only for understanding cities in a global context, but for intervening in them. And I see this intervention, which is related actually to us, very much as what we humanists learn from urban planners and architects, interpreting their histories. That I see very much as the humanities input. We interpret, we close read texts and therefore cities, engaging with them in the present and speculating about their futures. Everything that is speculative in nature is very much humanistically inflected. We create narratives about the future. So this book introduces both the theory and practice of urban humanities, tracing the evolution of the concept, presenting methods and practices with a wide range of research applications. There we go, the very applications and methods and practices. We humanists are very thankful to architects and urban planners to learn that from them. Describing changes in teaching and curricula, and offering case studies of urban humanities practices in the field. So urban humanities views the city through a lens of spatial justice. And here I use a different color because here is where the humanists and the architects and the urban planners at urban humanities truly intertwine and fuse. And its inquiries are centered on the micro settings of everyday life. Again, humanists are very good at applying the lens to the small. And again, this is again related to humanistic interpretation and close reading of artifacts, among them literature, but also cities. So the book's case studies report on real world projects in mega cities in the Pacific Rim: Tokyo, Shanghai, Mexico City, and Los Angeles, with several projects described in detail, including playful spaces. Playful, I should have highlighted in yellow as well, because that's also very much humanities and art. playful spaces for children in car-oriented Mexico City, a commons in a Tokyo neighborhood, and a rolling storytelling box to promote literary justice in Los Angeles. So in any case, I think this also offers an interesting glimpse into the variety and richness of the different projects that the book analyzes and that our seminars actually and program is brimming with. So this is a quote that I like. I just listened to it by chance on NPR. It was by George Lucas, the famous film director, who was talking about something entirely different. And suddenly he said, sciences are the how, and I love the humanities. And the interviewer asked him, where does this come from, and why are you saying this? And he said, very, very, very adamantly, sciences are the how and humanities are the why. I don't think that sciences don't have a big why in them as well, but it is true that humanities really focuses on the why. But now let's turn it the other way around, and let's look at, okay, what is it? The why is actually what perhaps architects and urban planners learn from humanists, from their pungent critical inquiry and the obsession with, okay, this is a building very well built, but why did you build it? This is a street very well planned, but why did you plan it? So that's probably what, again, architects and urban planners learn from us, but there's so much that humanities students actually learn from them. So let's turn it the other way around. We of course learn, and when I say we, I mean we humanists, we do learn skills that are then very useful to us, like thick mapping, spatial ethnography, filmic sensing. Dana also mentioned design interventions, and then Gustavo mentioned telenovelas or comics. Again, this is just, again, to say that urban humanities changes and enriches its gamut all the time. So these skills are very much important, but more important, I think, is what I'm going to say now, which is what underlies the philosophy of urban humanities, and where we humanists learn a lot. So we do reflect a lot. We are the why, let's put it that way. But reflection is only reflection if it turns into action. And action is what we learn from urban planners and architects. So reflection is only reflection if it engages in dialogue. And reflection is only reflection on the city when it collaboratively and engagingly, engaged is a very important word as well, acts and dialogues in the city. And that is, in a nutshell, urban humanities. But again, neither reflection nor action are of any relevance if they are not infused with ethics, which in urban humanities translates into spatial justice. And the ethical imperative, because urban humanities is always, though we look into the past and futurity and imagining the future is very important, we always engage with what is around us. This intense engagement with our contemporary reality is fundamental to urban humanities, yet another cause why urban humanities changes all the time. Sure enough, this year we have gone through tremendous changes, and we know what these changes are. And therefore, urban humanities' ethical imperative is to respond to the following pressing question. What can urban humanities do against racial injustice and health inequality as they converge in the contemporary city? The images that you see, those are pictures I took just 2 days ago, actually 1 day ago, at Abbot Kinney, the fancy street in Venice, where all the stores were boarded up and are now in the verge of being unboarded. And then you have a dumpster that actually dialogues with the world that gives, and this artist put a mask on one of his graffiti. So I would like to finish with a potential case study. Again, I was telling you that Abbot Kinney is dismantling now all the boarding, the unboarding its businesses, its stores. So it has this entrepreneurial air now that, okay, we are back to business. And it is in some ways quite discouraging, and it got me into a melancholy mood. So while I was documenting this, there was this man on the stairs actually separating two boards and therefore interrupting literally the name of George Floyd. And there it's capitalism shining through. And I was wondering, is it forgetting about the social, fundamental, tragic social issues? And I asked him, what are you going to do with the boards? And he said nonchalantly, well, I would put it in my backyard, probably. Okay, so I kept walking, and there's roosterfish, and again, they kept George Floyd again on that wall. And I asked the person, the waiter who was actually stepping out and carrying some trash, and I asked him, "Are you going to leave the board on your corner?" And he said, "Just for a little bit." Okay, this is a perfect case, urban example where urban humanities could quickly intervene. And if we had our students in our seminar now, as I speak, we would probably first reflect at length, and there's humanities kicking in, about what does this mean? Why are these two images accompanied by the two sentences so powerfully symbolic? It will also bring into play another term that is fundamental in urban humanities, which is memory. The ethical imperative to reflect upon reality so that we do not forget. How easily forgettable is George Floyd gonna be when business kicks in? So after reflection comes action, and what sort of urban intervention could we do to avoid the tearing apart of George Floyd's name, the elimination of George Floyd's reality and brutal murder from the corners of our cities? Anyhow, it's an open question, it's an important one, and it reflects very clearly the spirit and the ethical imperative of urban humanities. And here I finish. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Maite, for that and for the presentation. Now I'd like to turn it over to Professor Todd Presner, who I think has joined us, and we'll just share. Todd, as a reminder, is a professor of Germanic languages and comparative literature, and is also a member of the core faculty of the Urban Humanities Initiative. So thank you, Todd, for joining us. And I realize we're running a bit behind. So if folks are able to, this is recorded, so we will be able to share this if you have to hop off right at 1. But if you are able to stick around and hear from some of our alumni and stay for a short Q&A, we hope you can do so. So Todd, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, hi. I'll keep it very short then. So I want to make sure that folks have a chance to ask questions. I'm Todd Presner. I'm one of the faculty co-PIs of the Urban Humanities Initiative. I've been involved for the last 8 years. My work began in Berlin shortly, believe it or not, shortly after the fall of the wall. And I was dealing with the politics of multiple memory cultures in the urban landscape as a city had to imagine how to put itself back together again, and what parts of the past would be recognized and what parts of the past would be suppressed. And it turns out these questions are so urgent today. I mean, when I look at questions around toppling of Confederate statues, for example, or removals of plaques on buildings that really glorify aspects of our racist, white supremacist past, the question of how do we come to terms with the past is a question that Germany constantly dealt with in the 1990s and 2000s. I mean, it dealt with it, I think, significantly more than the United States has ever dealt with coming to terms with any of its genocidal pasts. And I say that in a very strong way because I really, truly believe it's true. And it makes an important obligation on us, on all of us as faculty in the urban humanities, and also as students, as for the way in which the past, the present, and the future are really coming together in an initiative to think about and also act in creating spaces that respond to social injustices and are more than just words. I think what's I like and I've always been so inspired by with urban humanities is that it's not just words. It's not just task, reports or white papers, but it's active engagement with policy. And I think Dana's work is amazing on City Lab for this. I mean, changing policies. It's also about art, because art is where the imagination is. It's about imagining alternative futures. It's about bringing people together and thinking about spaces that address issues of equity and inequity. And this is also why I think the historical is important, because it's never forgetting the past. And it's also looking at how to amplify voices that have been left out. And to me, this is also goes with the ethical that Dana spoke about. So that's sort of where I come from. I kind of come from this trajectory on sort of studying Germany in the 20th century, which is also the history of Nazism, the history of white supremacy, racism, anti-Semitism, and the politics of memory in the post-war period, and bringing that kind of knowledge and those kind of questions to bear on Los Angeles, to bear on our comparative studies in Shanghai, Tokyo, and Mexico City, and and honestly, to learning a lot from you, because these are also areas that I haven't been formally trained in. I mean, architecture is not one of those areas, and it's been an amazing. I think that's been the beauty of urban humanities, is that we're all learning together and being pushed forward. So thank you for the opportunity, and happy to answer any questions from that perspective.
Thank you so much, Todd. And now I want to just turn it over to a couple of our alumni. Kate Taylor Hasty is pursuing her PhD in architecture, and Jacqueline Barrios is pursuing her PhD in English. Both are graduates of urban humanities, and just will share a little bit about their experience and how it's informed their trajectories. Who would like to go first?
I guess I'll go.
Sure. Thanks, Kate.
Sure. Okay. So hi, everyone. I'm Kate Taylor Hasty, as Gus has already said. So I'm going into my I'm ending my second year as a PhD student. Jesus. Okay. So I did the Urban Humanities program in my first year. I did the Shanghai year. So things are a little bit different from what I did, but a lot of the kind of main points still apply. So it is a year-long commitment, as I'm sure you guys are aware. A lot of the work you're going to be doing is field work. So you're going to be on the ground, working in these neighborhoods, kind of getting to know the area, getting to know the space, getting to know your specific project areas. A lot of the group is group work. There is some individual work. If that hasn't changed, I'm not exactly sure, but a lot of the work is a small group work. And we kind of shuffled around to different groups in the different quarters. And so I guess I worked with 3 different groups. And so you aren't going to be with the same people for the entire year, or working exactly with the same people the entire year. That being said, the cohorts get very close. You spend a lot of time together. You basically spend a year taking at least one class altogether. A lot of people, depending on the program you're in, you might see them a lot more. And I think MERPs, I'm talking to you. But otherwise, it's a bit give and take on that. I think the things that I enjoyed the most, the travel was great, but the multidisciplinary and the multicultural work was like really important to the experience, at least for me. It was something that I would not have gotten in any other way in any other program at UCLA. I had in the architecture PhD program, there are people coming from a lot of different backgrounds, but for lack of a better term, forced interaction kind of does make a big difference. And so you do have to learn to work with these people. You do have to learn to communicate and to get over those barriers that might be there if you don't actually have to spend a ton of time with people. I think the amount of field work was also really intrinsic to the experience. I think I did anthropology in undergrad, and so we also had kind of fieldwork elements, but not in this way. Like it was kind of do it yourself. In urban humanities, there is a do it yourself element, as in there are going to be times when your group has to go back to the site or whatnot kind of thing in your own time in order to get the research that you need or get the film that you need or whatever documentary supplies or whatever that you need. But a lot of the work is just a lot of the field work is built into the program. And so you're really going to get your hands dirty and kind of really get into a project really deeply. And you actually get to see a lot of your projects through and see at least some of the effects of your projects, which is really rewarding. And having being able to see like what you did is a really nice feeling at the end. I think for my own research, for me, I kind of stuck with the project that I came into the program with largely. And so I think the impact of UHI for me was kind of more methodological in kind of the way that I approach my research rather than my particular topic, although I did have classmates whose actual like dissertations or I guess BCs came directly out of UHI. But I digress. So I think methodologically, I think thick mapping and spatial ethnography, to use Dana's terms, were like kind of blew my mind on some level because I'd never thought about my topic in this way at all. And it's a really good visual technique just to kind of put this in front of someone and be able to like give them a ton of information in one place and in a really effective way. I think a lot of the methods that you're going to learn in UHI have very effective outcomes in a lot of different areas. And so as time goes on, you're going to see their uses more and more. It might not be like immediate for you, but trust me, it comes. And I guess beyond that, incorporating kind of the like notions of spatial justice into my work, I think spatial justice was a part of my work to a degree. I guess I specialize in Civil War monuments, basically. And so spatial justice was like kind of baked into it from the start. But I think UHI, or going through the UHI program, helped me to really kind of lean into the social justice aspect as opposed to kind of trying to like nudge by it a little bit at first. And so really kind of owning that part of the research and really making it a key part of what I'm doing. Again, I guess like everybody else, looking forward to answering any questions that you guys might have for me. This is a really great program. I hope you guys do it. So pass it over to you, Jacqueline.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Kate. I'm just going to try to synthesize it really quickly. I wanted to share like 3 kind of key words and about why the Urban Humanities program is integral to my own intellectual career and work. And one, I think, is embodiment and materiality. Actually, I have 2 words. But I think as a humanist, the work that you all do in urban humanities has to do with translating your thought into some kind of embodied experience, either for yourself or out in the world. So, I never would have been asked to do things like, create a Japanese screen to tell the story of like the erasure of, or to tell a ghost story about Tokyo, or make a digital salon podcast. But these are sorts of projects that I would have only been able to do because of my participation in urban humanities. And so that's important, that I think is unique. The other is I know that there's a buzzword about, engagement and, community outreach and having your work be public facing, having your work as a humanities person have some sort of like justification to the public. And I found that at this point in time of my time at UCLA, that those are not things that you can slap on to your work like when you need it. And part of what the urban humanities community does is it's about the values that people already bring in to their work, and you're going to be around people where the commitments and values for racial justice, for telling histories that have been erased. Like those are things already that are sort of part of the values of the people that you're around, and the communities that they bring in. And so I feel like that's a key aspect of why the experience matters to me, is that the engagement becomes the idea of engaging your community is not it's not just a word or a kind of like a title, but it's really a part of the values that people act out and continually choose out to do. And I can talk more about the ways in which I found that as my background as a public school teacher in South Los Angeles really found expression through my time at UCLA in a way that I don't think the English department at UCLA could have, and so have supported me in that. So if you bring in a commitment to a community, I think the Urban Humanities program is a space that will really help make that flourish and make that be a part of your scholarship. And the last, I think, is about the idea of teams, and people have talked about this a lot, and how important it is as a humanist to have different audiences for your thinking. And there's no way you can just sort of trot out your great ideas to your team members and not be called out if you don't really understand what you're talking about. In other words, you can't rely on jargon. You have to really speak and own your content in such a way that it's translatable to different audiences. And I think that has just really served me well in my own work and in the confidence that I think I have about my project. And I guess just to say that I'm in my the last phase of my PhD program. I'm a candidate now working on my dissertation, and the dissertation is basically an urban humanist project. It's called London's Pacific Rim, and it's retelling the story of 19th century London in its connection to East Asian communities and experiences, and that would not have happened without UHI. And I think from my perspective as a scholar of 19th century literature, and I think what UHI has given me is the ability to tell different stories about urban space, and actually to even recognize that there are different stories that need to be told about the city. And those are things that happen through just a constant immersion in working out the problems that urban humanist projects give to you. Yeah, that's it.
Great, thank you so much, Jacqueline. Okay, so let's go ahead and open it up for a Q&A session. I realize we are over time, so thanks to those of you who are able to stick around and chat a little bit. If you could go ahead and if you have a question, just raise your hand by clicking on the participants icon at the bottom of the screen. And then I'll go ahead and take note of who is raising their hand. So the first hand I see raised is by Sofia Garcia. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Great. Hi, everyone. Oh, I'm so excited. I went to Wellesley College and East Coast School and didn't have as much conversation around social justice. I was an environmental studies major. So just being on this webinar, I'm like holding back tears hearing spatial justice and social justice being talked about a lot. A little bit of background about me. I'm the GIS analyst for the Dolores Huerta Foundation here in Bakersford, California. So I do a lot of mapping social justice work right now, currently doing a lot of work around preparing for redistricting in 2021. A lot of my work is based in community knowledge and ground truthing, what I do as a GIS analyst. So I've been really curious, sort of two-part question, like what is the approach that you guys use at UCLA when you approach a community group or nonprofit organization? Being a person on the other side, it's very important for us to not, we don't really work with organizations or schools that want to just take over a project. We want to really own it and make sure that we're able to sustain it long term. So really interested to hear how you guys approach that with community members. And then just on the other end, I saw some story maps from Gustavo, and I'm really curious if you and your students have submitted those to the Esri Users Conference that's happening in July. I'm also doing a lot of work around equity and social justice with Esri and their new initiative that Jack just emailed. So really curious. I would love to see more of that work highlighted. And if not, please let me know and we could try our best to highlight that during the conference. So yeah, big GIS person here and really interested in yeah, hearing your thoughts on that. And I had no idea what thick mapping was, so I'm gonna go buy that book and research it beforehand. So
Thanks for that question, Sophia. I sort of heard there's a two-part question in there, one about the kind of engaged scholarship work of urban humanities and how we approach that, and then the second one about the story maps. Maybe Dana, if you want to talk about the engaged scholarship approach that we take, and Gustavo, you could answer the question about the story maps.
Thanks for the question, Sophia. How we work with communities has been one of the most important issues that we face, and really is kind of the test of what Maite was talking about, the ethics of urban humanities. And it has set us into our whole new way of operating, really. I mean, we're super conscious of never taking an extraction model of community engagement. And I think at the same time, we feel that we contribute in ways that are authentic and genuine to our own expertise. If we don't have something to bring, then we're inherently in an extractive model. But the thing that we have had trouble with, given our quarter system and the, you know, each year being a different focus, was a long-term and sustained engagement. And that's really set up the establishment of CoLab, which Gustavo heads in the Westlake Pico Union, so that we really have 3 to 4 long-term partners now that we're going to be engaged with over the next 5 years at a minimum. So we've thought long and hard about this, and we continue to learn from the students and from our community partners about how to do it even better.
Hi, Sophia. Thanks for the question. Yeah, in terms of the story maps, and that was Kenny Wang. He was my TA. He had a lot to do in selecting the story maps as a platform, because it allowed us to gather different types of information in different formats. And again, because the project, the research we were doing was all remotely, and we needed a platform that we could ground or situate the e-codex research, which came in different, hard data, mapping, interviews by phone, online research, visual research, and some actually went on site and took photographs to the actual site at a distance. So it had many layers of information of different types and different, I guess, magnitudes. And so story maps allowed us to archive and organize that information. What was interesting also, some groups, 2 or 3 groups, in addition to the story maps, decided to create another platform, additional platform. They use Cargo platform, which was more interactive, more, creative. You could do more creative and more playful things with the material, with information, with the visuals, with the video clips, with the sounds. So it's and I have to say, I mean, this is our first, or at least for me, was the first try doing this. I was very pleased with the result, but it seems like it's something that probably we're going to continue doing, exploring more in depth and kind of getting more better at it. But yeah, and yeah, we'd like to submit something like the conference that you suggested.
All right, I don't see any other hands raised at this time. But if someone does have a question that they'd like to ask, they could go ahead and unmute themselves to ask.
I actually have a question.
Sure. If you wouldn't mind, just introducing yourself.
Yeah, sorry, I'm moving around the room here, getting my old laptop set up. My name is Joaquin. I'm just finishing up my first year in the Library and Information Science program here at UCLA. And I've been working at the digital library program, and over the summer was really interested in using story maps to, in coordination with the digital library's holdings of like sound recordings, oral histories, the Frontera collections, kind of LA-based labels, recordings, photos from the different archives, and using those to kind of document displacement, I guess, or communities, neighborhoods that have been lost to development and that have a certain amount of documentation already in the university's holdings. So all of this is really fascinating to me. I like that the past sessions you had on Westlake, your summer session, you made the syllabi open access. So I was able to browse through that. And I would really love to, not so much to just crib the work that your students have done, your fellows have done on previous story maps projects, like you mentioned, but it would be really helpful, I think, to see how you've all engaged with it. So I was just wondering if you could, are those freely accessible, like collected? I mean, it might have already been mentioned, but if you could just point me towards the kind of end results of your story maps work, that would be really helpful. But in general, I've just found this really fascinating because I'm someone new to the field. I know the Center for Critical Internet Inquiry within my department is doing really fascinating work on anti-eviction mapping, things like that. I'm new to GIS, not really my kind of wheelhouse within IS, but I'd love to learn more, and I really appreciated the presentation. So thanks.
Yeah, we're gonna right now we're in the last stage of organizing the projects, the story maps, and evaluating them and giving feedback. Some students are thinking to keep working on them. They are open-ended, or if other students or other group of students want to continue a different aspect of the topic that in the story map, they can do that. And yeah, we will make it available, pretty soon. And because they are interesting, definitely interesting projects. And by the way, we've been we started to work with Professor Michelle Caswell from Archival Studies to really think and critical kind of perspective, the the value of archival processes, and particularly in the Westlake Pico Union community. And that's gonna be, we're gonna be working very closely with her.
Great, thanks for sharing that.
All right, any other questions from folks? Feel free to just unmute yourself and if you'd like. Gabe, did you have a question? I saw that your screen was unmuted. All right. Well, I think some of us will be able to stay on for a little bit longer, but again, I just want to thank everyone for attending this information session. And you know, we're all available as alumni, as staff, as faculty to follow up questions that you may have, whether it's about the curriculum, the course themes, the logistics of how fieldwork is conducted during this time. The deadline to apply is June 30th, and we put a link in the chat directly to the page on our website where you can find the application form. So we definitely encourage you to apply, and in the process, feel free again to reach out to us. And you may be wondering, for example, how the curriculum will fit into your main degree programs. And you know, we all of the alumni here represent the different disciplinary backgrounds that can speak to that balancing of, you know, what's required in your core degree and what's required as part of the certificate. So we're all here as resources for you, and we're excited to talk to you more and get to know you better. And with that, I think unless anyone from the staff or faculty or alumni have things to add, we look forward to your applications. Great, okay. Thanks everyone.